Story synopsis: 27-year-old freelance graphic designer Cass Reed drifts through the crowded, indifferent metropolis of Portland, trapped in repetitive workplace burnout, empty social relationships, and unhealed youthful regrets. A mysterious unsigned letter breaks her rigid daily loop, pushing her to step out of her comfort zone. She navigates cruel workplace competition, accidental urban adventures, warm stranger encounters, and faint hidden suspense buried in the city's old streets. In the process of chasing an unknown clue, she redefines career success, repairs broken self-confidence, and finally finds her own pace of growth in the bustling, empty city lights. Chapter 1: The Loop That Wouldn't Break. The alarm rang at 6:47 a.m. exactly, same as it had for 3 straight years. Cass Reed didn't need to look at her phone. She knew the weather: gray, damp Portland drizzle, no sun, no wind, just heavy mist clinging to the rooftops. She knew the traffic on the bridge would stall at 7:32. She knew the barista at the corner shop would hand her an iced oat milk latte, extra foam, no sugar, without asking. She knew her freelance inbox would be stuffed with trivial revision requests from clients who had no taste but endless opinions. Every single day was a copy of the last. She swung her legs over the bed, feet touching the frayed wool rug she'd bought at a flea market when she first moved to the city. The rug was worn thin at the edges, just like her patience. Just like her 20s, slipping away one repetitive morning at a time. Cass was 27. She had a stable client base, a small but cozy studio apartment, no debt, no drama, no surprises. By society's standard, she was winning. By her own quiet, buried standard, she was rotting slowly. She pulled on a faded gray hoodie, jeans scuffed at the knees, and white sneakers that had seen too many rainy sidewalks. Her dark brown hair was tied into a lazy bun, a few strands sticking damply to her forehead. She stared at herself in the bathroom mirror for 2 seconds. No bags, no glow. Just tired. Steady, mechanical tired. Another perfect day, she mumbled at her reflection, the sarcasm flat and lifeless. Downstairs, the apartment lobby smelled like old carpet and microwave popcorn from the night shift tenants. The elevator creaked its way down floor by floor, the sound so familiar it was white noise now. Cass stepped out onto the street, and the damp air hit her face, cool and dull. The city was awake but not alive. Hundreds of people moved past each other, heads down, eyes glued to screens, bodies moving on autopilot. Portland in late autumn was a gray watercolor, beautiful from a distance, lifeless up close. She walked the 3 blocks to her usual coffee spot, Rainy Corner. The bell above the door jingled the second she pushed in. The usual Mia, the morning barista, asked without looking up from steaming milk. "You know it," Cass said. Mia nodded. "You look more drained than yesterday. Client trouble again?" "Same old." Cass leaned against the counter, staring at the chalkboard menu sheet memorized word for word. "Guy wants me to redo a logo for the 4th time because he feels it doesn't pop. No actual feedback. Just vibes." Mia snorted. Vibes are the cheapest criticism in the freelance world. Cass laughed, a short, hollow sound. "Tell me about it." The coffee was ready in 60 seconds, exactly on schedule. Cass paid, grabbed the cup, and turned to leave. That was when she saw it. A white envelope, tucked under the windshield wiper of her beat-up old blue sedan. At first, she thought it was junk mail. A parking notice, a local restaurant flyer, a real estate ad. She got those every week. But this envelope was different. No logo, no return address, no printed text at all. Just plain white paper, sealed clean, handwriting so neat it looked printed. Her name was written on the front, only 3 words. Cass Reed, please read. No stamp. No street address. Nothing. Cass frowned. She lived a quiet life. No stalkers, no conflicts, no complicated relationships. She barely even argued with clients who would leave her a hand-delivered letter. She walked over, set her coffee on the car hood, and peeled the envelope free. The paper was crisp, untouched by rain, like it had been placed there only minutes before, even though she'd parked the car the night before at 10 p.m. She tore the seal open and pulled out a single sheet of paper. One sentence, centered on the page, black ink sharp and clear. You stopped looking 3 years ago. The answer is on Oak Street. Cass stared at the words for a long time. 3 years ago. 3 years ago was the day she'd given up. Given up on applying for the city's top design fellowship. Given up on moving out of Portland. Given up on chasing the big, risky dreams she'd once written down in a teenage journal. 3 years ago was the day she'd decided safe was better than sorry. Her chest tightened. She flipped the paper over. Blank. No signature, no clue, no explanation. She scanned the street. Pedestrians hurried by, strangers all. No one was watching her. No one paused. No one looked suspicious. The whole block moved in its usual mechanical rhythm. Weird, she muttered. She folded the paper, slipped it into her jacket pocket, and got into her car. The latte steamed in the cup holder. The engine turned over with a familiar sputter. But the routine was broken now. The smooth, boring loop she'd lived in for 3 years had a tiny crack. Oak Street. She knew Oak Street. It was the oldest street in downtown Portland, lined with vintage brick storefronts, half of them abandoned, half barely hanging on. Tourists never went there. Locals avoided it after dark. It was the part of the city time forgot. Cass had not set foot on Oak Street in exactly 3 years. The last time she'd been there, she'd stood in front of the old community art gallery, holding her fellowship application portfolio in shaking hands, too scared to walk inside. She'd turned around, walked away, and never gone back. That was the day she stopped looking. For the first time in years, Cass's morning routine felt not boring. It felt unsettled, unfixed, alive. She drove home slowly, her usual urge to rush through the morning work deadline gone. Her clients' endless revision requests didn't matter anymore. The repetitive days didn't feel inevitable. Someone knew her. Knew the quiet failure she'd never told anyone about. Knew the dream she'd buried. And that someone was waiting on Oak Street. Chapter 2: The Dead Gallery. Cass spent the entire morning distracted. She opened her laptop, stared at the client's logo draft, and couldn't focus. The letter's sentence looped in her head over and over. You stopped looking 3 years ago. The answer is on Oak Street. She finished one revision, sent it off, ignored the incoming reply request for more changes, and closed her laptop entirely. It was noon. The rain had lifted, leaving the air crisp and cool, the city glistening under weak pale sunlight. She grabbed her jacket, keys, and the mysterious letter, then headed out the door. Oak Street was a 10-minute drive from her apartment, but it felt like a different city entirely. The wide modern avenues, neon store signs, and crowded coffee shops vanished. In their place stood narrow brick roads, rusted street lamps, cracked sidewalks, and tall old oak trees that gave the street its name. The trees towered overhead, their bare branches weaving together to form a dark canopy over the road. Very few cars drove through. Very few people walked here. It was quiet in a way the rest of Portland never was. Cass parked at the curb, hands slightly nervous on the steering wheel. She hadn't felt nervous about anything in a long time. Nervousness meant caring. Caring meant risking disappointment. She stepped out of the car. The old art gallery was right where she remembered it, at the end of the street, a two-story brick building with faded white paint peeling off the window frames. The sign above the door still read Haven Gallery, but the letters were chipped and gray with age. The front windows were covered with semi-transparent dust film, blocking the view inside. 3 years ago, the gallery had been open, bustling with local artists, judges, and reviewers for the annual fellowship contest. Now it looked dead. Cass walked closer. A handwritten note was taped to the glass door, temporarily closed for renovation. The note was dated 2 years prior. "Renovation my ass," Cass whispered. The place looked abandoned. Boards leaned against the side wall. Weeds grew through the cracks in the front walkway. No lights glowed inside. No movement stirred behind the windows. She stood there, confused. The letter said the answer was here, but there was nothing here except an empty, closed gallery. She circled the building slowly, scanning every window, every door, every wall for some clue. Halfway down the side alley, she spotted something new. A small wooden door, hidden between two thick oak tree trunks, unmarked, unpainted, almost invisible from the street. And taped to that door was another white envelope. Cass's heart skipped a beat. She walked forward quickly, reached out, and pulled the envelope free. Same plain paper, same neat handwriting, Same lack of signature. She tore it open. This note was longer. The gallery didn't close because it failed. It closed because someone stopped showing up. The key is under the oldest oak at the end of the block. Come inside. No more running. Cass froze. Someone was speaking directly to her. Not to a stranger. To the girl who'd chickened out 3 years ago. She walked to the end of the block, where the largest, oldest oak tree stood, its trunk wide and gnarled, roots bulging above the sidewalk concrete. She knelt down, brushed away fallen dry leaves and damp dirt from the base of the tree. Beneath a flat stone, exactly where the note implied, was a small brass key. It was worn smooth from years of being touched, but it shone faintly in the weak sunlight. Cass picked it up. It felt heavy in her palm. She returned to the hidden wooden side door, inserted the key into the lock, and turned. Click. The lock turned smoothly, like it had been waiting for her all along. She pushed the door open slowly. Inside was darkness at first, cool and still air smelling of old paper, paint, and cedar wood. She stepped over the threshold, and her eyes adjusted gradually. It was the back room of the old gallery. Empty canvas frames leaned against the walls. Wooden art tables sat dust-covered in the center of the room. Shelves lined the walls, holding old paint tubes, sketchbooks, charcoal sticks, and faded art prints. Sunlight streamed through high narrow windows, cutting bright slants through the floating dust in the air. It looked like an artist's frozen dream, untouched for years. And in the exact center of the room, sitting alone on a clean wooden stool, was a leather-bound sketchbook. Cass walked forward slowly, her sneakers quiet on the hardwood floor. She reached out and picked up the sketchbook. It was her sketchbook. The one she'd lost 3 years ago, the day she'd run away from the gallery. the one filled with all her best original art, the portfolio she'd planned to submit for the fellowship. She'd searched for months after that day, convinced she'd dropped it on the street. She'd never found it. Her fingers trembled as she flipped the cover open. Every page was hers. Every sketch, every design, every messy draft and polished piece. All the art she'd loved enough to stay up all night creating. All the passion she'd buried under freelance client work and safe routine. Tucked inside the back cover was one final note, written in the same handwriting as the letters. You didn't fail. You quit before you tried. The gallery never stopped believing in you. Cass stared at the words, and for the first time in 3 years, her throat tightened with emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel: regret, relief, and a tiny, flickering spark of hope. Chapter 3: The Stranger in the Empty Room. I've been waiting for you to finally walk in. The voice came from the shadowed doorway at the far end of the room, low, calm, and unhurried. Cass jumped, spinning around fast, sketchbook clutched tight to her chest. Her heart raced. She'd assumed the building was empty. She'd assumed she was alone. A man stepped out of the shadow into the slanted sunlight. He looked to be in his early 40s, lean, with dark hair streaked faintly with gray at the temples, sharp dark eyes, and a quiet, worn kindness in his face. He wore a simple black flannel shirt, dark jeans, and scuffed leather boots. No fancy clothes, no pretension. Just calm, steady presence. He didn't move closer. He just stood there, hands relaxed at his sides, watching her. "Who are you?" Cass asked, voice steadier than she felt. "Eli Voss," he said. "I run this gallery. Or what's left of it." Cass frowned. "I thought it closed 2 years ago." "The public front closed 2 years ago," Eli said. The back room never closed. I've been here every day. Cass glanced down at the sketchbook in her hands, then back at him. You left me the letters. You kept my book. Eli nodded. I saw you 3 years ago. Standing outside the front door. Too scared to come in. Too scared to submit your work. You turned and walked away before I could call your name. A flush of embarrassment warmed Cass's cheeks. She thought no one had noticed her cowardice that day. Why keep it? She asked quietly. Why wait 3 years to reach out? Eli leaned his shoulder against the door frame, his gaze softening. Because people don't change when you push them. They change when they're ready. 3 years ago, you weren't ready to stop hiding behind safe jobs and easy client work. You needed to burn out first. You needed to get tired of your own routine. Cass stared at him, stunned by how accurately he'd pinned her life. How do you know so much about me? I watch the city, Eli said simply. I watch the artists who pass through the street. Most leave. A few come back. You're the one I've been waiting for. He pushed off the door frame and walked slowly across the dusty floor, stopping a few feet away from her, giving her space. He didn't crowd her. He didn't pressure her. The fellowship, Cass said suddenly. Is it still available? Eli smiled faintly. The official city fellowship ended 2 years ago. But I started a private residency. Small. Unpublicized. No judges. No competition. No rigid rules. Just space. Time. Freedom to create whatever you want. He gestured around the empty gallery room. This space is yours if you want it. For 30 days. No client deadlines. No revision requests. No one telling you what looks good or what pops. Just you and your art. Cass's breath caught. It was everything she'd once wanted. Everything she'd convinced herself was too risky, too unrealistic, too late. "Why me?" she whispered. "There are hundreds of better artists in the city." "Better is subjective," Eli said. "Hunger isn't. You have hunger buried under your routine. Most people your age have let theirs die completely. You just hit yours." He paused, then added, "But there's a catch." Cass tensed. "What catch?" "For 30 days, you have to quit your freelance client work entirely," Eli said. "No checking emails. No taking orders. No compromising your creativity for someone else's profit. You create for you, or you walk away right now. No middle ground." Instant panic flared in Cass's chest. Her freelance work was her security, her steady income, her safe life. If she stepped away for 30 days, she would lose clients, lose momentum, lose the stable routine she'd built for years. It was risky. Terrifyingly so. But as she looked down at her sketchbook, at the pages full of art she'd abandoned, she realized something cold and true. Her safe life was slowly killing the best part of her. 30 days, she repeated. Eli nodded. 30 days to remember who you are, outside of what you do for money. At the end of it, you choose. Go back to your routine, or rebuild your art career on your own terms. No pressure. No judgment. Cass closed her eyes for one long second. She thought of every repetitive morning, every meaningless revision, every night she'd gone to bed feeling empty despite having everything stable. When she opened her eyes again, her decision was made. I'll do it. Chapter 4 Workplace Gravity. Quitting her freelance routine was harder than Cass expected. That evening, She sat at her apartment laptop and drafted a polite pause notice for all her long-term clients. As she typed, her hands shook slightly. Every client reply pinged back within minutes, sharp and disappointed. 30 days off. This is terrible timing. We rely on your work, Cass. This is unprofessional. If you step away now, we'll have to find someone else. The words stung. Workplace gravity was powerful. It pulled you back into place, told you that your value existed only in your productivity, your reliability, your willingness to sacrifice your time for other people's goals. Cass took a deep breath and typed the same reply to every message. I appreciate our partnership. I'm taking a short creative sabbatical to refocus on my original work. I'll be unavailable for revisions and projects for 30 days. Thank you for your understanding. She turned off all email notifications, muted all work chat apps, closed her laptop and slid it into her desk drawer, shutting it away like locking up an old cage. For the first night in 3 years, she had no work to do. It felt wrong. It felt lazy. It felt selfish. She paced her small apartment restlessly, habit pulling her toward her desk, toward productivity, toward the safe loop she'd broken. That was the hidden cruelty of routine. It didn't just occupy your time. It rewired your brain to believe that rest was failure, creativity was indulgence, and self-growth was irresponsible. The next morning, Cass arrived at the Haven Gallery at 8 a.m. Eli was already there, setting up fresh paint tubes on the wooden tables, opening new packs of sketch paper, sweeping dust from the floor. He worked slowly, deliberately, no rush, no urgency. "You're early," he said when she walked in. "I didn't know what to do with my morning without work," Cass admitted. Eli smiled. "Welcome to freedom. It's uncomfortable at first." He gestured to the empty wall space. Pick your corner. Make it yours. No rules. No deadlines. Just create. Cass walked to the far wall, set down her old sketchbook, and stared at the blank white space. For a long minute, she froze. After years of only creating what others asked for, she didn't know how to create for herself anymore. Her mind was full of client filters. Is this marketable? Will the client like it? Does it look professional? Does it fit the brand guidelines? She had unlearned how to simply make art that felt true. Eli noticed her hesitation but didn't intervene. He just leaned against a table and waited, letting her sit in the discomfort. What if I'm bad at this now? Cass asked finally, voice small. Then you're bad at it for a little while, Eli said. Bad practice is how you get good again. You think professional athletes never miss? You think writers never write garbage? First drafts. Growth starts with allowing yourself to suck publicly. Cass laughed. A real, light laugh this time. She picked up a charcoal stick, pressed it to the paper, and started drawing. Her first sketches were stiff, overworked, tight. Her hands were used to precise client designs, bold clean lines, perfect symmetry. She'd forgotten how to draw messy, emotional, unpolished things. By noon, she crumpled 3 full pages and tossed them in the waste bin, frustrated. Eli walked over, glanced at the crumpled paper, and didn't criticize. He just said one thing: stop trying to impress someone who's not here. Cass paused. She was still designing for judges, for clients, for the version of success other people defined. She hadn't yet learned to design for herself. She took a deep breath, grabbed a new sheet of paper, and let her hand loosen. No rules. No perfection. No audience. Just creation. Chapter 5. Warmth from Strangers. By the third day, Cass fell into a new rhythm. She arrived at the gallery at dawn, before the city fully woke up. She drew until midday, took a slow walk down Oak Street to a tiny family-owned diner, and returned in the afternoon to paint. The diner was called Oak Nook, a narrow little spot with chipped mugs, wooden booths worn smooth by decades of customers, and a menu written in faded marker on a whiteboard. The owner was an older woman named Marnie, silver-haired, round-faced, with permanent smile lines around her eyes. She worked alone most days, cooking, serving, and cleaning without rushing. On Cass's first visit, Marnie set a warm blueberry muffin down on her plate without asking. On the house, Marnie said, "You look like you're remembering how to breathe again." Cass blinked, surprised. "Is it that obvious?" Marnie chuckled, refilling her coffee. "Honey, I've owned this diner for 22 years. I see every kind of tired walk through that door. There's burnout tired, and there's waking up tired. You're the second one. Rare these days." They didn't talk much that day. Cass ate her muffin, sipped her coffee, and watched the quiet street outside the window. No one hurried here. No one stared at screens while eating. People talked slowly, laughed softly, existed peacefully. It was a kind of warmth Cass hadn't known in years, the quiet, unforced kindness of strangers who didn't want anything from you. In the modern downtown area, every interaction was transactional. Clients wanted work, co-workers wanted favors, acquaintances wanted networking. No one just wanted to be nice. Oak Street was different. On the fifth day, rain poured hard all morning, thick gray sheets drowning the city. Cass stayed in the gallery, painting by lamplight, the window fogged over. Mid-afternoon, her phone buzzed in her pocket, one of her biggest clients, sending an urgent message. We found another designer. Your spot is replaced. Don't bother coming back. 3 years of steady client work, gone in one text. A sharp panic flared in Cass's chest. For a split second, she regretted her choice. Regretted walking away from safety. Regretting risking her stable life for a dream that might not even matter. She froze, paintbrush hovering mid-air, heart racing. Eli noticed her stillness. He walked over, glanced at the phone screen without prying, and said gently, "Losing clients feels like losing identity when your whole life is work. But it's not loss. It's space." Space for what? Cass asked, voice tight. Space for you to build something that can't get taken away from you, Eli said. Clients leave. Jobs end. Trends fade. But your art, your growth, no one can replace that. Cass stared at the message a second longer, then locked her phone and set it aside. He was right. Her old life had been fragile, built entirely on other people's demands. Her new life, messy and uncertain as it was finally hers. That evening, she walked to Oak Nook again, shaken and quiet. Marnie slid a hot bowl of tomato soup across the counter. No charge, no questions. Rough day? Marnie asked softly. I lost a big client, Cass admitted. Marnie nodded, unimpressed. Good. Now you don't have to design things that don't feed your soul just to pay rent. You're finally free to chase the work that matters. It doesn't feel free, Cass said. It feels scary. Marnie smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. Freedom always feels scary at first. Chains feel safe. They're familiar. But safe doesn't mean alive, baby. Cass ate the warm soup slowly, letting the heat settle in her chest. In the quiet diner, in the gentle rain, in the kindness of two strangers who knew nothing about her past, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, grounded, not floating, not looping, not surviving, living. Chapter 6 Small Urban Adventure. On the 10th day of her residency, Eli offered Cass an unexpected opportunity. The old city archive building on the west side is being renovated, he said over morning coffee. They're clearing out decades of forgotten artwork, old posters, vintage street sketches, abandoned artist portfolios. Most of it's going to be thrown away. Cass looked up from her sketchbook. Thrown away. Eli nodded. The city doesn't have the budget to preserve it. They're bulldozing half the archive storage next week. I have a key to the old wing. If you want, we can go through it tomorrow. Save whatever we can. It was a small adventure, unplanned, spontaneous, the exact opposite of Cass's structured, predictable old life. I want to go, she said immediately. The next morning, they drove across town to the forgotten archive building, a massive gray brick structure hidden behind modern office towers, overlooked by the rushing city around it. The front entrance was boarded up, but Eli unlocked a side service door, and they stepped inside. The air inside was thick with the smell of old paper, dust, and aged wood. Rows and rows of tall metal filing cabinets lined endless hallways. Stacked cardboard boxes reached the ceiling, labeled with faded handwritten dates from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. It was a treasure house of forgotten urban art, buried beneath the progress of the modern city. No one comes here anymore, Eli said, his voice echoing softly. The city moved forward too fast. Left all its old stories behind. They spent the entire day digging through boxes. Cass found vintage hand-drawn street maps of old Portland, colorful concert posters from decades-old local bands, personal sketchbooks from unknown artists who'd lived and created and then vanished without recognition.